Hello, and welcome to another episode of Perspectives from the Informed Perspective. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. We're really glad you're here. This podcast is a space where we explore what it means to build strong, thoughtful communities grounded in our local lives, but enriched by the diverse connections, energy, and perspectives we gather from around the world. As the name suggests, the informed perspective is built on the belief that meaningful change begins by listening, really listening to different voices, lived experiences, and perspectives that might challenge or expand our own. Each episode takes a closer look at individual stories that spark reflection and help us rethink how we understand community, purpose, and impact. Today, you're joining us for a special podcast called Beyond the Curriculum, where we're going to explore what happens when education isn't tied down by tradition. What's possible when learning steps outside the classroom, beyond timetables and exam results, and instead supports the wonderfully complicated, creative, and powerful journey of growing up. UNESCO tells us that nearly half of all learning happens outside formal education through informal experiences, real-world practice, and everyday life. Supporting this, a study by University College London and the Wildlife Trust found that 79% of children felt more confident after spending time learning outdoors in nature. And a 2022 study published in Frontiers in Public Health shows that nature-based outdoor learning boosts social skills, academic progress, and well-being, recommending it be part of every child's education, tailored to their local environment. And this directly supports what we champion at the Informed Perspective, the vital role of community engagement and connection. Beyond academic benefits, mentoring plays a vital role in supporting young people's mental health, identity development, sense of belonging, community engagement, and smooth transitions into higher education and careers. A study by Mentor found that 59% of young people involved in mentoring programs reported feeling more emotionally supported and mentally resilient. Similarly, research from the American Youth Policy Forum from 2019 showed that 62% of mentored youth demonstrated improved social skills and more positive attitudes towards their peers. Today, we're going to talk to educators, mentors, and visionaries who are reimagining learning, not just to pass exams, but to live well, lead with empathy, take risks, and grow into confident, grounded individuals. We'll ask, what does real-world learning look like? What if creativity, courage, and community mattered as much as grades? And how can we better prepare young people, not just for school, but for life? And as ever, for those of you who do listen more frequently, I have a few quotes to get us rolling. Albert Einstein said, "It is a miracle that curiosity survives formal education." The Spanish author Carlos Ruiz Zafón wrote, "All the geography, trigonometry, and arithmetic in the world are useless unless you learn to think for yourself. No school teaches you that. It's not on the curriculum." Seema Papert, a prominent mathematician and educator, in his book Mindstorms, Children, Computers, and Powerful Ideas, wrote, "Every maker of video games knows something that the makers of curriculum don't seem to understand. You'll never see a video game being advertised as being easy. Kids who do not like school will tell you it's not because it's too hard, it's because it's boring." So Ken Robinson, the writer, in his work, The Element, How Finding Your Passion Changes Everything, wrote, "Schools divide the curricula into specialist segments. Students are educated in batches according to age, as if the most important thing they have in common is their date of manufacture." And John Taylor Gatto, American educator and author, wrote, "Whatever an education is, it should make you a unique individual, not a conformist. It should teach you what is important, how to live and how to die." And Yehudi Menuhin, world-renowned violinist and conductor, "Why is compassion not part of our established curriculum, an inherent part of our education? Compassion, awe, wonder, curiosity, exaltation, humility, these are the very foundation of any real civilization." Erin Kenny, an advocate for unschooling and alternative education, "Children cannot bounce off the walls if we take away the walls." And John Muir, the writer, wrote, "In every walk with nature, one receives far more than he seeks." So, over to you, Jenny, and introduce our guests, please.
Thank you, Penny. We've got a full guest list today for amazing people doing some super work across their disciplines, and it's really nice just to think a bit more outside the box. Nature's come up a lot in our self-discovery podcast, and mindset comes up a lot in, what we do and the perspectives we want to share. So it'd be great to hear from you all. So first up, we've got Matthew Barnsley. He's the director and founder of Polaris Outdoor. He is an experienced exploration geologist specializing in remote desert, high altitude, mountain jungle, and Arctic environments, working with the National History Museum, Lima, the Bear Grylls production team, Disney, National Geographic, and many more, and has taken archaeological and paleontological digs to a number of regions around the world, making groundbreaking new discoveries with experts and students. Matt is also an experienced secondary school teacher, achieving senior leadership level. He has trained staff and principals, implemented new curriculums, and created outdoor education departments for schools all over the world. And Tristian Griffiths is the ex-senior leader in the secondary education who has transitioned into mentoring and coaching, focusing on wellbeing and mindset support. He is the director of YEMPact, a youth empowerment community company dedicated to building resilience, confidence, and motivation in young people. Tristian is also the founder of Your Empowered Mindset, a coaching company that offers practical, no-nonsense support to athletes with a focus on real strategies over theory. And Claudia Slattery is an outdoor educator and adventure program manager with over 20 years of experience mentoring young people through sport, education, and the wild outdoors. Claudia has spent the past 5 years designing and leading transformative outdoor programs to Drakensberg in South Africa, helping children reconnect with nature, imagination, and play elements she believes are essential to building resilience and character in a world that often prioritizes structure over spontaneity. She's the founder of a multi-sport academy serving over 300 children weekly and has managed more than 40 outdoor programs annually. From multi-day wilderness expeditions to leadership-based adventure learning, Claudia creates powerful growth experiences that help young people step outside their comfort zones and discover who they are beyond the classroom. And last but not least is Saul Simpson, a forest school leader and founder of Pines Forest School based in Poland, along with the Pines Primary and the Pines Foundation. Originally from Manchester, he has dedicated his career to outdoor and inclusive education across the UK, Poland, and Canada, where he worked alongside national park rangers. With a passion for nature-based hands-on learning, Saul creates spaces where children, including those with special educational needs, can build confidence, curiosity, and a deep connection to the world around them. So let's get started. Over to you, Penny.
Wow, so many amazing people doing amazing things for the young. So first of all, thank you so much to all of you. I'd like to start with you, Matt, if that's okay today. You work with young people in very unpredictable, sometimes harsh conditions. How do these environments bring out character, confidence, or vulnerability? Can you tell us a little bit more about what that does for the young that you work with?
So it's a really good question. One of the things that can really go wrong, I think, with this question is the setup. And I think the setup, everything about a good teacher is prep. And if a teacher has a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge, they can pull a lesson out of the bag and they can run with it and they can get excellent results, and the students can have a fantastic time. And the same thing goes with really remote and potentially hazardous areas. So, for example, you could take students to a deserted tropical island off the north coast of Borneo and dump them there for 5 days and give them some tasks and say, oh, by the way, watch out for the crocodiles. Um, or you could train them how to deal with the crocodiles. So they learn what a crocodile likes, where they hang out, what they like to eat, where they sleep, how they rest, how they look after their young. And once they're educated in that way, then they're then empowered, and working in teams, you can make something which might normally be actually a very hazardous place actually a lot safer. our motto in the company is knowledge is power, so be powerful. And when you teach fantastic skills and knowledge to young people, they can really, really achieve incredible things. And the outdoor environment is, I think, the perfect place for that. In the classroom, you are exceptionally confined. You know, you can have extra questions, and you can do stuff for the gifted and talented, and you know, you can push students within the classroom. But outdoors, there's so much more that can be seen and done and learned from. And if you've got incredible mentors around you, sky's the limit, really. And we've had some just, I mean, hundreds of brilliant stories seeing our students progress, and some of them have even gone into the industry. One of them, he's 20 years younger than me, and he's a far better outdoor bushcraft and survival instructor than I am, and he's also a cracking teacher as well. So it's great to see after long periods of time the students turn into grown men and women and do amazing things with their own lives.
Would you say that it's partly because I'm sort of thinking the classroom's quite predictable, right? You kind of, you know, the setting, you know, the characters who are going to turn up. Is it that unpredictability? I mean, I'm thinking you're saying you prepare the students, but there is always going to be a level of something else that can suddenly rock up that you can't necessarily be prepared for, or is that not the case?
You don't want that to be the case. So you as the leader, um, you know, when you look at the Duke of Edinburgh Award, when you read their kind of policies and procedures and their risk assessments and stuff, they say that they don't want to take away all risk. That life is risk, and so we want to create an environment where there are acceptable risks. Now, going back to the crocodile thing, is it acceptable that you take students on a school trip and that it's possible that they get eaten by a crocodile? Well, not really, because you know, that wouldn't really go down well with parents and carers and the teaching staff either. But in the risk assessment, there are sections on certain wildlife, including crocodiles, and how the students and the participants are prepared and educated to deal with them, and then the mitigations and the things that you put in place to make your situation as the teacher quite predictable. For the students and participants, for them, it may seem like completely unpredictable and insane and amazing and incredible. But for you as the leader in the field, you do want things to be relatively predictable. And I think that only comes through a lot of experience. So once you've been to the jungle 10 or 20 times, then you're going to kind of know what's going on. Also, working with the best of the best really helps. Some of the people who work with Polaris, they're just incredible world class individuals who have worked all over the world doing absolutely amazing things, and they've all got incredible stories. And so having, you know, we as leaders having our own mentors who are also absolutely incredible in their field can then teach us and help us to be adaptable and also get the most out of the students as we work with them.
So it sounds a bit like that's the safety net, right? So that's an essential part of it, that there is that security that your employees are offering so that they feel that they're, you know, in a safe place.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people talk about risk assessment with quite a lot of resentment, but I love them because we make them available to all our participants, whether you're taking out the Natural History Museum, archaeologists, or whether you're taking out some school students. We want everybody to understand the risks involved and the parameters in which we are going to operate. And once they know those, then you're not having to tell them to stay within them. Instead, you're all acting within the little bubble that you want to operate. If you go outside your risk assessment, then you're usually going to end up making a mistake of some sort.
And what about discomfort and failure? I mean, that is obviously something that I'm sure you've seen on many of your expeditions, but isn't that an important part of the growth that the students are making on their journey? And do you have an example maybe of someone who you could tell us about?
So I'll tell you one thing that we do, which I encourage everybody to do, who either school teachers or even companies, before we go on any expedition, because we can go to quite remote places, and we love that we can do that. So obviously, before we go, they do a pre-expedition training course, and that's super, super important. But they also do a few other things. One of them is we ask them to fill out a questionnaire. The questionnaire includes what are their hopes and dreams, what are their fears and anxieties, what do they love, what do they hate. And what we then do is we take one of their strengths and we get them to help somebody in the team who has a weakness in that same area. Now, often this is quite a personal thing, so we will usually ask them to keep it private or to respect that other person and their needs, and they respect this so well, and it's incredible the results. And then what happens is, in a team of, say, so you've got 20 people going to the Amazon jungle, you have 20 people who are all doing one thing that is associated with the strength of theirs to help somebody else improve a weakness. And you're also trying to improve one of your weaknesses. And we call this the personal task. And we have booklets and reflection and diary entries and risk assessments that they do whilst on expedition with us. And it creates this spider web, and it like anneals the group together. So they're all consciously and subconsciously, yes, they're on an exped in an incredible location, but they're also helping somebody else on that trip as well. And it brings everybody together and it gets them all working. We get unbelievable results with this. We've had selective mutes who haven't spoken or said a word for 2 years, who have then given presentations by the end of a camp or a trip. We've got people who are terrified of heights, and then they're scaling trees in the Amazon jungle, and so on and so forth. So to kind of bring this full circle, what you need to do, you can't just dump your participants in an environment and expect to get the best out of them. But if you prepare carefully, incredible and unbelievable things can happen. So prior training and also prior reflection about what they're about to do and how they're going to do it. So you're setting up the body and the mind for the learning experience that they're about to go through. And the results can be absolutely unbelievable, far better than we ever had when I was a school teacher. And I'll just say this one last thing in finishing. In one of the outdoor education departments that I set up in a bunch of London schools, over a 4-year period, we were tracking students who were on the outdoor programs, comparing them with students who were not on the outdoor programs, and we were using their SAT results to make that comparison. We were finding that over a 4-year period, students who were doing extracurricular activities, especially the outdoor programs, their examination results at GCSE and A level were higher by over 30% when compared with students who were not on outdoor programs. And that for me was it. That was it. That was a testament to take me out of the classroom and to set up Polaris Outdoor.
But it's also having that balance, isn't it? You know, you need to also, team, when you're talking, I'm thinking teamwork, and also that recognition. I don't have to be skilled at everything. I don't have to, it's okay to have a weakness, and then being able to support someone else with your own strength, and that collaboration is just incredible. And I think if you're put in an intense situation, I mean, I've done expeditions to Africa as well in the past, you do suddenly have to rely on other people and look to other people for advice and help, and it can get really emotional, right?
And it's brilliant when you can set up the environment where the participants can turn to one another instead of necessarily just you. As a school teacher, my form students could turn to me every single day because I saw them every single day. With the people that we associate ourselves with, companies and schools, we see them once a year, twice a year, sometimes consistently, which is fantastic, and it's great to see them still grow from that kind of pastoral side. But it's so amazing when they can turn to their dearest friends and get that help and understanding from one another in that environment and take that home with them. And that, again, that has more impact than them turning to you as their leader. So helping them to associate with one another is also really, really important. It's not all about like us and having the spotlight on us. It's about them trying to put the spotlight on one another and helping each other along the journey.
And it's about the individuals, isn't it? Which I think sometimes can quite easily get lost in that personal knowledge and exploration and deeper understanding of yourself. But if you can, you need people, other people to guide you to help that, and that partnership you set up sounds such a wonderful way to do that, and quite a deeply personal and intimate way.
Was there something that sorry, Matt?
No, go on, sorry.
Well, I was going to move on, so carry on.
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you what the impetus was as a trigger, because you were obviously in teaching before, and probably was that a more conventional teaching role? What made you, did you see a gap? Was there something that said to you, I want to do this?
Well, I became a pastoral lead for a large school, and what I found was, because I was head of outdoor education as well, a lot of our students, the pastoral issues that we were having in school were disappearing. Bullying went right down. The students associated the school environment with happiness, because the school environment was associated with the bushcraft club or climbing club or kayaking club or whatever else was going on at the time. And so because um, because that worked so well, I wanted to expand on that. And so it started off with working with the Royal Geographical Society and helping teachers through the RGS, and then going around to different schools and helping senior management teams with just applying some of the principles that we'd learned along our journey. And then the company Polaris, it just kind of happened, because there was so many requests saying, "Oh, thank you for setting this up for us. Can you do this, or can you kick us off with our first trip, or can you do this as well? Can you help us with a successful risk assessment?" And so it just happened, and we've been going for over 10 years, and we haven't looked back. And it's been a great journey, and seeing many students who wouldn't usually have solidified careers in the outdoor industry go into science, especially the scientific outdoor industries. We love all that kind of stuff. There's a large percentage of our participants who go into those fields.
Having been on an expedition.
Yeah, well, we often, if we get a student 2 or 3 times, they start to turn into full-on little Rambos. And if you go on the website, some of those students, they're actually employed by Polaris, and they rub shoulders with the Ranulph Fienneses and the David Attenborough trainers, and these top people, and they're good enough to stand next to them because of the training that they've had along the way.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Matt. So I'm going to move on to Tristian now. Tristian, you work in behavior and inclusion, which are areas that are often deal with students who feel outside of the system, I suppose. What do the stories that you hear reveal about what the curriculum seems to be missing?
I'm thankful that I went after Matt, because I took so much from your response then, Matt. And I feel there's so many similarities in our path that eventually led us where we are. But for me, personally, pupils that struggle within that curriculum boundary or are deemed outside the curriculum, I genuinely feel that they don't see the purpose in school. They don't see the purpose in education. They severely miss the point, or the point that we are trying as a society to bestow upon them. I think back sometimes to when I was in school, which frankly wasn't that many years ago, or I tell myself so, and used to have snow days. Okay, a snow day used to be world's biggest news. Could have been breaking news on Sky News for all we know. Mum and Dad would have to take a day off work. It was like bedlam. There's no school. COVID happened, and all of a sudden we shut the doors of schools for months at a time. Now, coming out of that now, I'm yet to meet a young person who would be alarmed by the closure of their school. It's perfectly normal. Either they go online or they don't go online. But a lot of these pupils, they're told it's important, but they don't see the relevance to their life. And I often think about pupils, say for example, now you have a pupil whose genuine interest, even at such a young age, they might not do anything with it beyond that, but would be art. But they're given art 1 hour a week, 2 sometimes. And I think about the type of school setting where if you booked in advance, I think it would be a logistical nightmare. That isn't what my job is. But if you love art, then go and spend 2-3 hours a day in the art classroom. If you are a young pupil who has a keen interest in engineering, building, or learning about scaffolding or the structure, go and spend some time doing that. Is we are still determining what is important to them, and they're not connecting with it in the same way that we feel that they want to. That I feel that there's a lack of freedom. And going to what Matt was saying, I think about pupils that I've been on school trips with who in the classroom, everyone who's had experience in education has had this. Classroom, they're a nightmare. Outside of the classroom, see them in a total new light. They've come out of the shell, they're far more well-mannered, they're polite, they're inquisitive. And you just think to yourself, why then am I trying to force this child into a classroom? Because someone's told me it's my job. But still, it doesn't link to real life. And the one thing I'm passionate about is soft skills are still the king. From everyone I've met on this podcast, I would very quickly employ anybody or work with anybody just by the way you've presented yourself. I stopped and thought, oh, I wonder what Penny got in her GCSEs. It doesn't interest me, and I don't think it interests people in the real world once they present themselves to be capable people. And so we're still adamant that we have to deliver school standards, present in a certain way, whereas the freedom of interest has gone. And in the particular, those that struggle with behavior, they don't struggle with behavior when they take a keen interest in things. There are obviously a minority that would struggle in any situation, that's society, but I think the space to grow is fundamentally missing, personally.
And
I think,
sorry,
yeah,
listening to you speak, Tristian, is that in school settings, the boundaries that children will push, which is part of their development, will often be, and the risk they'll take will be a behaviour associated, because there are the rules, but you put them in other settings and opportunities, and the risks and the rules are different, and you're given different parameters, and you can, I often mention my 6-year-old, and it's not a coincidence that he has spent time in Saul's forest school, but he wanted a knife. He wanted a knife, and my dad got him one this week, and my dad just will buy him anything, but if he wants it. And then as soon as they were about to hand it over, he said, "Are you sure, Jenny? Like, should we be doing this?" My dad wanted to read the instruction manual. He loves an instruction manual for anything. And, and you're like, no. And I trusted Isaac knows the risk. And he had some parameters that he could operate in. We set some new ones for the home environment because obviously it's different. And he's completely able to do what he wants in a kind of what feels like to him risk-taking, because he's using something different. He's having this, and he turns to it when he's angry, which might not sound like a good connection, but he can go and do something that he knows that he can push his sort of boundaries in and create something. So I think it's given them the ability to take risk and push outside of the sort of norm.
Yeah. I think as well, though, based on that, we as adults, we look at young people as though they will eventually reach a point that we do, but I honestly don't think we ever really do reach it. The more people say me, it might just be me, the more people tell me how to behave or try to control me, the more I push against them. I'm 34 years old. It's just a natural reaction. But the more people tell me, it's your choice, go with what you feel. Then I look at the perspective and I think, oh yeah, it is my choice. And I'll try and do the best decision based on that. But if you try and, control that situation, I'm still going to push against you.
I was thinking as also that you were saying or suggesting that kids should be allowed maybe to do more of what they're good at or more of where their passions lie. And I absolutely agree with that. But I also think that in particular in the UK and the system, that this is for the older students, but often doors are shut very quickly on. So you have to make those decisions about when you have no idea at that age anyway what you're really into. You might have had a bad teacher, so that's science, the door gets slammed shut. You shut so many doors and you can then be really restricted, right? We're looking at A levels. I mean, at least when I was doing them, whatever they're called now, but it would be maybe 3 or 4 subjects. And you may be shutting so many doors to professions that would have been exactly up your street. So I think that's also the other element within that discussion. What I wanted to ask you about is how do we really support students in finding themselves? I mean, and how should schools be playing a role in that journey? What does that look like in practice?
For me, on my view on this, what I created when I left education is, you never stop being a teacher. So my coaching curriculum was based on a school curriculum. It was how to structured approach to how you can build confidence, how you build resilience, and how you build and sustain motivation, because we assume that just happens in people. I used to look at confident people and go, I wonder what it's like to be that confident, and assume that's for you, it's not for me. Or I used to look at people with mental strength in sport, people like Novak Djokovic, the tennis player, and think, oh, I wonder what it'd be like to be as mentally strong as they are. There's a route, there's a path, there's a system. And so I think we should do more about mindset. I think we should teach young people not just about mental health. I feel like the UK is doing a lot for mental health now, is trying to battle a difficult fight against young people's mental health. But deeper than that is mindset. The curriculum doesn't want to stop to teach people what is confidence. What is it in its multiple layers? One of the, to the point you made just before this, I was thinking about one of the determiners of how confident you are as an adult is early experiences. And so if you have gone to a biology class and you didn't quite understand it, well, your confidence in the biology becomes this statement: oh, I don't do biology. I can't do biology.
Can't do math.
It lasts. I can't do maths. It lasts a lifetime. I can't do PE. I don't do PE. But then certain people will not do PE in school. You'll see them 10 years later in leggings coming from the gym. They love they're running marathons. They're doing high rocks. We're not doing enough to explain mindsets, in my opinion. We're not doing enough to uncover that. We're trying to feed, or force feed, you could say, maths, like you've just said. And although in terms of how the brain works, it serves a purpose, but so does teaching confidence, so does teaching resilience. And if you want someone to really feel their identity, they've got to understand who they are. They've got to understand how they currently fit in that model. Am I a confident person? Am I a resilient person?
So how do you help young people build those qualities? I mean, is it then send them all off on an expedition out into the wilderness and then find out who they really are?
I wish that I was on those expeditions. I will be one day. But so the system that I follow is I have a questionnaire similar to what Matt was discussing. And it's a series of questions. And so it would be a statement 1 to 5 along the lines of how you feel and how you think, 1 being low, 5 being high. And then the outcome of that is that you have a score, and it determines, just for myself and the young person or the potential client, where they fit in those areas. I would then create a system that would boost them in those areas, much like a PT would for a client in the gym. If they say they need some support with agility, then certain moves or certain workouts would benefit them more in that way. If they want to develop strength, certain moves, workout, diets benefit them in that way. I think my connection with the outdoors has been a blended approach to what I do. So I would provide them with practical techniques. Say, for example, now, we used to do something similar like 2 stars and a wish in school. I would give someone the task of every single day, I want 2 stars and a wish, and 2 things that you love about yourself, and 1 thing that you feel you could have perhaps approached in a different way, or affirmations. It could be any number. I've gone blank on myself now, any number of practical strategies. But what we do is we try to encourage people to live that challenge. And lucky enough, where we live, it's right in the center of Aruri, or just over the bridge it is. But we have these resilience workshops where we take young people. We're at in Llanberis, at the town where you would begin your ascent up Wyddfa, Snowdon. Mm. And so we talk about we talk about what challenges they face. We talk about what difficulties they're trying to overcome. And along the summit then, which you can do with around about 2.5 hours, 3 hours, depending on who's with you, we stop and we have mini workshops. So we go into a little more detail about how you could specifically approach a challenge and how it links into your approach to go up the mountain. In the purpose of to simplify it for young people, you don't say, we haven't just gone 1 long walk up this mountain, we're not fit enough. That's the reality of a challenge. You would have to stop, assess, determine, do I need a break? How long of a break? Do I need fuel? Have I got the right food? Have I packed properly? Have I prepared properly? If I just continue to take 1 step after the other, would I reach the point where I reach the summit? And these are just so beneficial, and they aid the curriculum of resilience so well, because it's physical and they can see it, and they're outdoors, and they reach that summit as Matt and everybody would say, and the change in them, the sheer sense of achievement that you're never ever going to get within the curriculum.
And that's sort of breaking that down, that huge challenge. A bit like when you climb the mountain and you see the peak and you're like, I'm almost there. And then you go around the corner and the peak's gone again. And then you get there. But just sort of knowing we can do it if we chunk it down. And that's like anything in life, right? If we do it bit by bit, you'll get there eventually. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you, Tristian. Going to move on to Claudia now. Claudia, I've seen recently that you've been questioning the ability or the capacity, perhaps, for stretched teachers in being able to support their students in outdoor settings. I'm assuming in challenging outdoor settings. Can you tell us a bit more about this and what your solution might be to this?
So I have to say, I really hope that one day I get to be on school camp or on an expedition with all the speakers in tonight's talk, because I think we'll have an epic adventure. And it's this kind of school teacher that I would love to see more out on these expeditions. And maybe it takes teachers to realize that the classroom without walls is not really getting us what we want. Now, in the South African context, and schools might be slightly different to what you're seeing in the UK and the US and in other places, but what generally happens is the schools that I've worked with will send school teachers from a pastoral care perspective. And it will vary. Sometimes I'll have 10 teachers per 100 children. Sometimes I'll have 4 teachers per 100 children. Obviously, in all of our camps, we have guides, we have leaders who are taking on that guiding, that mentorship role. But those teachers have to kind of be the representative for the school. They should take over the pastoral care of those individuals. But what I've noticed over the last couple of years is I find that the kids are so eager. I always say, put me with the kids. Put me with the pupils. It is so much fun. They will overcome the challenge together as a group. And I loved what Matt Barnsley had said. And I loved what Tristian said about leaning on each other within the group and not necessarily leaning on the instructor or leaning on the teacher. But so often I see that teacher likes the predictability of the classroom. They know the classroom. They are only out on that expedition because they've been told to from a school. It's part of their school contract, or all the adventurous people, the fit people, the strong people just simply couldn't be there because of a school curriculum timetable that won't allow them to be there. So we left with teachers who are so out of their comfort zone, doing things that not only they are personally out of their comfort zone, but now they have to show up to 10 other of their students, and they have to show the students that they can actually do this and that they are enjoying this, even though they might be hating every moment of it. But also that responsibility, because those teachers know that they're going to have the parents on their backs. And we've all spoken about curriculum, we've all spoken about schools, we've all spoken about teachers, but no one's actually mentioned the current parents that we are facing. And that is something that we're finding more challenging. I love Matt saying he likes writing risk assessments. I think I'm the only other person with Matt who does that, because it makes you sit there and go, what have I not thought about? What have I not prepared for? But our parents are becoming a huge hindrance. If something gets back to the parents about a child, oh my gosh, the parents are now on top of the school is on top of the teacher. So I kind of question, should the companies like Matt's also working for, like I'm working for, should we take complete responsibility, and should that school have the responsibility that our mentors, our leaders, our instructors are actually the best trained in these unpredictable environments? And we've actually got to school kids, because I've seen it too often where literally, and I'll use this analogy, that the teacher is holding onto the weakest student, so that the children think it's the student that's holding them back and not the teacher. And I feel so sore for that group on an expedition, on an experience where they're going, but we never got what we wanted out of this, because that teacher couldn't actually cope in that environment. And I got to tell you, being a teacher in the modern school world, I think all the people in this group can say this. The expectations on the teachers are just, in some ways, unrealistic. And that's what I'm questioning. Are we putting the right teachers into these spaces? Because at the end of the day, we want to get the results of these outdoor programs, and we need the teachers who can do that.
Yeah, but it seems like then there's really a need for these third services or these providers that are additional to the schools, but also in a sense, affiliated. But, if you're talking about how the parents are hanging on, that whole purpose of these expeditions or the outdoor experience, if the teachers are representing the parents while they're there, they're not having the full depth of that experience that they should be having. So it's
completely.
Yeah.
And I think
we're seeing a big trend, which we're really battling to kind of overcome this. I know when I went on to school tour as a kid, my parents said goodbye and they saw us 5 days later. Now the WhatsApp groups and the photos, and now the instructors and the leaders are expected to take photos of all the kids every second of the day. And I'm going, hold on, aren't we trying to keep your child safe from the crocodile, not send you a photo of what's happening? So we're faced with a whole lot of different factors that are affecting how we deliver these outdoor programs, and how schools manage that, because at the end of the day, the parent is the client.
Are most of the schools that you're working with, is it state subsidized, or are these private schools that you're working with? Because, I'm just thinking back with Matt as well, having the luxury of being able to have such an offering isn't for every school, right? I mean, it's not across the board.
So in South Africa, with the work groups we work are private schools. We bring a lot of UK universities and UK schools from the UK to South Africa. So yeah, it's very much on the private side of education that we're working with.
Yeah, and that's where, something has to change at some point, right?
I think,
and it's, either in our training of teachers, there needs to be a new choice, outdoor education, where you can actually choose to have that outdoor education training. I look at Tristian, I look at Matt, and I go, wow, what incredible teachers to have on your team. And those are the kind of teachers that we want to be sending off with the students, but they're few and far between, I think.
I think we mentioned as well, like the expectations, it's those confines on the teachers as well, and the freedom to be able to explore those outdoor experiences. But to your point, Claudia, they can't do that when they're in this authoritative role as a teacher because of the expectations. We did a great podcast on masculinity, and one of the speakers was a former teacher, and he said, I could never share my vulnerabilities and my experience and my honest experiences of being a man, and when I was a teacher, because it just wasn't, he didn't use the word appropriate, but he just couldn't have. If the kids had gone home and said, oh, Mr. So-and-so told us about, when he first watched porn, it wouldn't land well because of those expectations set, and the teachers haven't got the freedom to explore themselves and be themselves in that capacity because, in the standard, school setting.
And I just had the most amazing experience a year ago where I was leading a group of 12 girls, and we were doing some really adventurous hiking, river rafting, but we got to a moment where we had to jump 20 meters off a rock into a natural pool. And it was that moment where I could feel what the teachers felt, where if I don't do this, the children aren't going to do this. And that for me was a moment of, oh, hold on, this is what our current teachers are feeling when they are on an outdoor program. But they're not just feeling it for a moment, they're feeling it for the full 10 days. And that stress on the teacher is so huge. And we don't realize that. And I sometimes wonder if that's fair to the teachers.
Yeah, and especially with the burden of everything else they have to carry on their shoulders of, different special needs within the classroom and being a psychologist and everything else that you're expected to do today, all in one role. What I wanted to ask you, Claudia, though, is that you've also set up running groups and cycling groups and all kinds of things. So there is a value in not just having to go on a 3-week expedition, potentially for people who don't have that luxury. It's sort of also having something maybe that's just local, but it's offering that outdoor experience. What kind of impact have you seen that have on children and communities that you've been working with?
Sports is the most incredible activity, and I think one thing is freedom as well, being able to just go out and run wherever you are. When people are challenged, and my whole working with adults specifically started when I noticed that women didn't know how to start running. So we started with 5Ks, and I got them outdoors just running 5Ks and consistently and showing up. What that turned out, within 2 years, these women were running in marathons around the world, and they've all gone. They've run the Great Wall of China, they've run the London Marathon, because they didn't necessarily know where to start. And as we spoke about earlier, somebody thought that I'm not good at PT, I can't do it. But did they have the right teacher? Did they have the right person who told them, actually, you can? And it goes back to parenting. I've watched parents, it sounds like most of us are parents on this group. I just watch friends and how they speak to their children. Don't do this, it's dangerous. You can't go here. Watch out. I get tired of watching my friends' parents. Because what can I do as a kid? Because I'm being told that the world is unsafe. But then we're sitting here in an outdoor education field going, but you've been told that simply walking across the road is unsafe. We're not giving them the skills to, here we are, let's walk across the road. Just like Matt said about the crocodiles. We acknowledge that they're crocodiles. Now we need to train the students how to cross the area safely. And that I believe that we're finding a big problem with our parents because of that. And we're seeing that in everything from sports, where either have to be Olympic athletes or we mustn't do anything at all. And really, park run is one of the most wonderful activities. You can find a park run anywhere in the UK, all kinds of I know it's quite a global thing, every Saturday morning. Forest school, I'm actually the second qualified forest school leader in South Africa. I don't know if there's anybody else subsequently. But that is how we need to be getting our kids out into nature naturally every single day. And unfortunately, parents just don't have the time or want to anymore.
Or we're just so ingrained to, I caught myself and still do, how often I say, be careful. And it was like, gosh, I realised, and then it's like, actually, you've got to, and you can, you're always suppressing, really, like, don't do that. Okay, you want to take your basketball on the school run, okay, but be careful of the road. And I said it once, okay, that went onto the road, and I was like, well, that's just how you learn, actually. It's scary, isn't it? It could have gone under the car. I mean, it was horrible. But I just can't keep hearing, be careful, don't do that. You've got to challenge yourself as a parent, is what I'm getting at as well. Is not, your language you use, the repression.
That's it.
I'd like to move on to Saul now, if that's possible.
Of course.
Last but not least. So you set up a forest school in Poland, and I really want to ask, really, from the concept that you've developed around that. We find that mainstream schooling is often separating academic success from emotional well-being or personal development. How does the learning in your school, outdoors, in community, through risk or balance, how does it rewire that balance?
I think to start with, I think we're at a point now in education where we're in such a rush to constantly hit the next milestone that we don't take time to actually focus on the kids, have more of an individual approach to the kids. In our school, we are not just an outdoor school. And this is what I think we have another problem is schools are very extreme. They're either super academic or they're super democratic, and we're going to kind of run around with no shoes on. And what we're trying to do in our school is find a nice balance. So the kids will have indoor lessons where they will sit and they'll have to do aspects of the British and the Polish curriculum. But we want to make sure if they're going to be sat in that classroom, it has to be meaningful time. We don't want to create trauma with the kids. We don't want to create a situation where by the time they're 12, 13, they've already burnt out and they've had enough. And once you lose that love of education, I think it's really difficult to get that back. So what we try and do is from the really young kids, we start off very simple, and our goals are to make sure the kids are confident, resilient, happy is a big one. I don't think we talk about enough. Creative and independent. And once we have those 5 kind of values, the kids want to learn. Kids want to learn. If you put them in an environment where they understand, where they're treated fairly, where it's fun, they will learn. Now, our kids never want to go home at the end of a school day, which, they have to. Yeah. But
for your own mental health.
Oh, absolutely. I always say you don't have to go. You have to go home, but you can't stay here. Yeah. So no. So what we're trying to do is have a bit more of a balanced approach. Is find that happy medium where they will participate in the curriculum. They will learn certain aspects of, it isn't always going to be the most fun lesson. And sometimes we do have to just crack on and just get on with it. But we also try and make sure if there is going to be a maths lesson, can we take it outside? Can we go and build a deck? Can we go and build a table or chairs? Can we use the skills that we're learning in the lesson in more of a practical sense? And also, and the big one for us is we're not there to entertain the kids for the whole day. We are trying to keep it as simple as possible. So we're trying to do aspects of the British curriculum, aspects of the Polish curriculum, time with our specialists, so myself and Marek, our forest guy, and the rest of the time they're outside, they're playing. They're always watched, but they're playing, they're getting muddy, they're making mistakes, they're having arguments, they're doing things that we would do as kids. My dad would give me a football and he would tell me to go off until it was dark, and you would do that, and you would find things to do. You'd go to the meadows, you'd go to the forest, you'd play in the park. We don't have that anymore in this society. And what we're trying to do is trying to say to the kids, okay, come to school, you're in a safe environment. We've only got a small cohort of 60 kids. So it's a lot easier for us to, we're not there to contain the kids into the classroom. And I think a lot of what we do in general in schooling is we are containing for the sake of sanity of everyone. Yeah.
What we're trying to do is say, right, let's make sure everything is meaningful. Let's spend as much time outside. Let's have as much as an individual approach to the kids as we can have. And we want the kids to kind of harden up and be kind of strong, but we also want them to be emotionally sensitive so that they know that if they fall over and there's nothing wrong, okay, we can get up, we can crack on, we can keep going. But also, if you are hurt, if you are sad, it's okay to be upset. It's okay to come and speak to us. It's okay to cry. If you can't handle that argument that you're in, come and speak to us. Let us help you. But let's try and make sure they are as independent as possible from as young as possible. And again, kids are thirsty to learn. They're desperate to learn. If you put that environment in place, then they're happy to go to that maths lesson because it's not boring, you know.
Yeah, Jenny and I are talking about it all the time about how, life skills don't really seem to be in the curricula, right? So we've kind of sped along at such speed with all the technology and everything else, and yet the curricula seems to have kind of just stagnated. And I feel as well, like if you have got the option of having your phone and looking at it and getting that immense dopamine hit just then, classroom potentially can be quite boring for these children. So, I mean,
yeah. Sorry, go on.
Well, no, I was just sort of saying that I love the way that you're sort of taking they still have to meet the curriculum, they still have to do the subjects, and yet that idea of being able to replicate it somewhere else or putting them outside or giving them different resources or different tools or making it more relevant to their lives, I think.
Yeah, I think that's the point there is relevance. It has to be meaningful, it has to be relevant. And we want the kids to love learning. We don't want them to burn out before they're 12. I've worked in the schools where I've got 13, 14-year-olds telling me how stressed they are with an exam which is coming up, which an exam which is completely pointless. It's irrelevant. It's never going to be looked at twice. So why are we putting that stress on kids? What we would rather do is have the other side of that, which is we believe kind of stress comes in, like stress as being one side and resilience being the other side. So let's learn how to be resilient. Let's learn how to use tools. Let's learn how to build stuff. Let's learn that if we do get muddy, what's the consequence of that? If you do fall in the pond, what's the consequence?
Motivation as well. That's one of the biggest, motivators, but instigators of our tween talk was the second session. The kids started sharing with us how stressed they were. These were 10, 11-year-olds at the time. And so in the next session we did about stress, and we just gave them the space to talk about it. And actually, is it stress, or is it worry, or is it responsibility? Is it school? Is it family? There was no right or wrong answers. We had no agenda in it. We weren't trying to solve it. But actually to hear that and then kind of give them the opportunity to continue that conversation was an honor, but it was they don't have that space, at school.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things that we talk a lot with the kids and the parents, we have a very nice community. We are never in a rush to fill our school. We are a private business, but we treat the school as a non-profit, and we really make sure we have the right people within our community. And one thing we talk about a lot is the jobs that we have now, they will be different in 10 years' time. They'll be different in 20 years' time. And I come from a family of teachers. My dad's a teacher, both my brothers are teachers, my mum's a lecturer. It's in our blood, really. But we spend so many years, especially in the primary system, of kind of taking away. Excuse me a second. We take away. Apologies. We kind of take away that independence of kids. We take away that creativity. We take away that resilience. We teach the kids that there is one answer for each question, and they leave school, and to go and get these jobs that they want to have, they've got to be creative all of a sudden. They've got to be independent. They've got to have 50 different answers for the same question, because that's what the world looks like now. So our role, and we talk about a lot in our school, is we want to have happy kids. We want to have happy kids. We want the kids to understand why they're learning. Of course, there's some days when you say to the kids, okay, you don't want to do this piece of history, but it needs to be done for example, the Polish curriculum. We got to crack on. It's 20 minutes more and we're done. And we're teaching them that kind of, it needs to be relevant, but also they're going into a modern world where the skill sets that we had when I was at school aren't as relevant now as they were then. So yeah, it's happy kids, creative kids, independent kids, resilient kids, bravery. We still work a lot with kids from different schools. And Warsaw is a very particular place where we have an incredible amount of international schools and private schools, and we work a lot with them. And there is a huge difference I see from our kids that we see on a regular basis every day to kids from different international schools. And there's a certain kind of, maybe they're just a little bit more, they're not as hardened. They're not as quick to get up again and keep going. And I think that's a big part of childhood. And school isn't just about teaching maths and science and history. That's a part of it. But we also need to bring up young people to be good people in society. And what we were talking about before about risk assessments, being British, I love a risk assessment, but we actually call it a risk and benefit assessment, because if we constantly talk about risk and risk and risk and risk, it scares people. So we always make sure we put benefit at the end of each sentence, so people go, okay, there might be a risk involved. But if you spend an hour just writing risk assessments, before you know it, you think, oh, I don't want to do any of this. This sounds horrible. But if you put that benefit in there as well, okay, there might be a risk that they're going to, get a scratch with a knife. But what's the benefit of that? Is there's confidence, there's motor skills, there's a lot that comes with each one of these tasks, and it's very quickly forgotten, I find.
Do you think that the wider education system is starting to take sort of outdoor nature-based learning more seriously? I'm thinking in Poland, it's still quite fringe, right? I mean, it is still fringe.
I mean, in the UK for sure, I think it is. We are taking that Scandinavian approach. I think in Poland now, it's what I find is it's a lot about kind of how it can be marketed. For many years, a lot of schools were a British school, and then for many years it was a Montessori school, and now everyone's a forest school. And I kind of put air quotes because I visited lots of these schools, and it's fantastic that they're doing this, that they are going out, but very rarely are people forest school trained. The forest is about garden, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think we have to be careful not to get bogged down with, oh, we can sell this idea and it's a great marketing tool, but we have to know the real ethos behind it and the principles that back it up. Because if we don't back it up with the right principles and ethos, then I don't think we can, move forward.
Or it's just a walk in a forest, or it's a lesson taken outside, and yes, they'll have that, literally different environment and, potential experience, but the skills and the true experience is going to be.
But in itself, a walk in a forest is fantastic, especially if you're getting them out of the classroom. But it has to be consistent, and it has to have a plan behind it. When we go in on our weekend sessions, or when we work with these big international schools, the first thing that we say to the parents and the teachers, we're not going to structure this. It's not going to be activity 1 till 5. We're going to go for 4 or 5 hours to the forest, and we're going to set up a tool area, an area for fire, maybe an area for knife or axe throwing, small ropes course. But the kids are going to interact with that as they wish. And some kids will spend the whole session using tools constantly with us, and we do it in a very safe way, and we have lots of procedures. But some kids won't, and some kids will just sit in a hammock and hang out. And the very first session I ever did in Poland here, I had a little girl, maybe 12, and she went away and she was sat for an hour on her own. And after 1 hour, she finally came back. We were watching the whole time. She was close, but after an hour, she came and said, that was the first time in my life, and I remember I was allowed to sit without anyone expecting me to do something. Without being told, without someone saying, oh, what is it? And she was sat on her own. She was watching a squirrel, and we've lost that. And we're in this constant drive to achieve the next goal, and eventually it's retirement. I don't know why we're rushing towards this. And it's the kids these days, every minute is accounted for. In classrooms, after school clubs, every single minute is accounted for. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to really bring that forest school ethos of, okay, we're here. If you want us, we're here. These are the basic rules. If you want to sit in a hammock and chat with your friends or bring a book, that's on you. That's how you are going to react. If you want to make fire for 4 hours, brilliant, we can do that. But you have to decide. And these things have to be consistent. They have to be long term. It can't be once a month we're going to go 30 of us to the forest for a walk, because that's fine. But what are we trying to achieve? Yeah, what's the long term goals? Yeah.
And that returns to sort of let them be bored, right? So just give space to be bored. And I do think it's exactly what you said, that parents are almost frightened in a way of being inactive and not doing something. So it is literally one thing to the next. And what activity park are we taking to them? But it's always this containment, isn't it? Again, inside an indoor playground or wherever you're going to go. And maybe it is that fear of, if they had that time, that you would have to give them that independence that we're often talking about, that parents aren't willing.
We have incredible kids that come to our school, and that boredom, it creates creativity. So they will go and pick up that guitar that's left out, and everything's planned so that there is instruments ready for them if they want to. There's a chance to go and do tools if they want to. There's a mud kitchen. There's a place to make fire. We've built the stage recently, so if they want to go and actually make a little play, it's there. But we can't be the ones that are constantly saying, now we're going to do this, because then they don't learn. And there's so much learning which takes place outside. Only a few years ago we had a group who they create their own shop, for example, and they made things to sell, and they were speaking in English and they were speaking in Polish, and they were helping translate, and they were doing maths with selling, and that 3-hour session, they learned more in that than they would have done in a classroom. But as teachers, especially in the British system, we're so conditioned to go and ask constantly, now what? Now what? Why are you doing that? How does that make you feel? Once we break that kid's concentration and that flow, then it's very difficult to get back. So I think it's all about balance. And I think it's important that we do have the curriculum side, the classroom curriculum, but it has to be meaningful and it has to be balanced.
And an awareness that all schools potentially can bring more of extracurricular outdoor possibility into that it is possible, that it's not just a removed abstract concept, that it's you can mingle the two together and it's actually more beneficial.
Absolutely. I mean, the biggest problem I think we have is that it's winter, so it gets dark at 3:30. So it's very difficult, for schools to go, right, you've done all the important, maths and English, now you can have free time. But it's pitch black in the forest. And I think that's a lot of what we get asked still to do, is go and run extracurricular stuff. And we always say, we can run it, but we need to do it in the morning. And schools don't like that, because schools want to use that time for their classroom lessons. But it's I don't know. I think it's a lot about this constant need to keep moving forward and keep getting the next goal. And my friend's kid can do this. What can you do? And it's all kids will get to where they need to get to in their own time.
And
as long as we.
So much is time boxed and timetabled as well, even in our own lives and personal lives. You kind of have to go to a schedule. But even if you do give the kids the freedom to figure out what to do, if we're talking about, putting them out in these environments, it's often the natural thing is, oh, you can do that for 40 minutes, or an hour and a half. But actually, to the example you gave, Saul, it's like actually 3 hours, what you can produce and what you can learn and what you can explore and right and get wrong is so much significant.
And getting bored is good. Yeah, it's we get creative as a result, and this is something that kids don't really understand anymore. It's just constant dopamine hit of now what, and the laptop or the phone or we don't.
Also knowing there are other options out there. I think a lot of the time there's not an awareness that there are other alternatives apart from the device for a lot of young, because it's not so obvious, or isn't on offer.
Yeah, I mean, our kids are amazing. What we say to the parents is that they can bring their device for the bus and they can listen. We don't want them watching screens. We don't want them on YouTube. We want them to listen, and they can listen. And even sometimes we can get out the iPads especially for the older kids, for a research lesson, and they don't want to do it. They just don't care. They would rather read a book. And that is something that it takes time to get them to that point. But you have to kind of, rewire them to an extent, yeah.
On that note, then, we've got a question for you all. So we'll just do a quick round the table. And you prompted me, Saul, to ask this one. So, what's the one life skill or mindset you believe should be taught in every school but isn't? I don't know, Saul, if you want to go for it first.
I think something that I learned a lot, especially when I was working with kids and adults with special educational needs and from kind of more deprived areas, was everybody's an individual. And this is something that really bugs me. Then we, as teachers, it's that classic example of we're going to draw a flower and everyone needs to draw this flower. And then you end up with 30 pictures of the same flower on the wall, but it's not how we work as individuals. And I think if people start to recognize that we are individuals, regardless of our educational needs or whatever, everyone's an individual with their own different needs, different ways of speaking to each other. And this is something that really upsets me when we talk about stuff like learning approaches, because they sound great on paper, but I don't think it takes into account all the different kids that you're going to work with and adults you're going to work with on a daily basis. Yeah.
And that just reminds me of how a teacher has to be so skilled to be able to deal with every single individual within a classroom, and just the respect for that. I mean, that's just no easy.
It's impossible. Yeah, it's not possible to do it. And yeah.
And Matt, what do you think is the one skill or mindset that should be taught?
There's so many, isn't there? But I think if I had to just pick one, in my most recent years of work, I'd probably say determination and/or hard work. There are so many. I think in the latest young generation, a lot of them want everything done for them, or they want it for free, and that annoys me. So
And
when
straight
we
away, right?
Yeah, well, we've taken groups to the Himalayas. We've done first ascents in the Himalayas, mountains that no one has ever had boots on before, and you don't do that by holding back or not taking personal risks or pushing your body and mind to limits that you never thought. And without that hard work, there's no growth. It's Many of us have been to the gym and maybe ditched the gym membership after 2 months because it's too hard, and or we don't have the mental capacity for it. So hard work is my dad's a hardened Yorkshireman, and so he taught me hard work.
And life is hard, so if you can get on with it and work hard through it, it is.
Yeah, and be strong in body and mind, and you will enjoy life more, because if you're stronger, it's like a military kind of training technique, isn't it? If you're stronger than everybody else, then you can cope with bad situations. And mental, emotional, and physical resilience are awesome things to build up.
And that incredible feeling when you do overcome that hurdle, or you do achieve what you thought was the impossible, that is also unbeatable. That really makes you, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll just say one thing. When we dump kids on deserted tropical islands, we've got our own
Can you drop me on one?
it's paradise. It's absolutely beautiful, but at the end of the trip, they have to escape the island. So they forage the beach for junk, for anything that's just washed up, and some of the stuff they build is just brilliant. And there they are sailing off into the South China Sea. We have to go after them and get them back because their boats are too good. It's fantastic.
Amazing. And Claudia?
So I've had the privilege of homeschooling my children, because of how I questioned the education system. They are going into mainstream, but what I learned when my daughter was 5 was that there were 3 rules that I felt that a school needed. And those 3 rules have gone through our family. They're actually the basis of my rules for my camps. And the first rule is, it's all about my attitude. And that is so huge because it's how you perceive the task that you're going to do. And for me, that is the most and fundamental. And I got to tell you, it's challenged me as a parent, as a leader, is how I see that activity. If I don't show up to that activity completely wholehearted, engaged, how do I expect anybody else to? And how do I see it? So all about my attitude, never say can't. That's another second rule. And I've gone blank on the third one. But for me, it's that attitude. And I see that in our youngsters, especially our 15-year-olds. I always say they come onto camp as one child. By day 3, we've got a different person because we've changed that attitude.
And how many doors open up for you if your attitude to the world is open and happy and grateful, then your life can go potentially a very different direction, right? So you're selling yourself short if you don't present yourself to your full greatness.
That's it. And my third rule is actually finish what you start, which has bitten me on the bum a couple of times when I've been racing. And I go, I have to finish this because if I don't finish this, my children are going to say, but you finish what you start. And I think that's a really hard thing for the current youth because it's so easy just to give up. So even if you start doing your lesson today, you've got to finish doing the lesson. Cleaning up after making a meal. You can eat the meal, but if you haven't cleaned up, you haven't finished the meal. And I've seen that raising children and homeschooling and working with kids is finish what you start is a really, really hard concept that we are battling to actually have a beginning, middle, and an end.
Thank you. And Tristian?
I think mine would, I'm very lucky in the sense that I do get to cover a lot of these with the young people I work with, but I could just choose one. I look back at myself in my teenage years. I wish someone had taught me, I'll get rid of that. I wish someone had taught me how to truly be confident. I feel as though that underpins everything, underpins our mood, our ambition, our self-belief, the way we see other people, the way we assume other people's thoughts and feelings of us. I feel as though when you are confident, the world just looks like a totally different place. And when you are not very confident, you're very shy and timid, and the world can just cave on top of you. And of course, there are days where you're not going to feel on top of the world. But if someone was able to really teach me and show me, mentor me in a way, that confidence can be taught. And confidence is a step-by-step process. It happens. There's a quote that I think of probably every day, and I sometimes think about simplifying it even further for young people. But it was Alex Hormozy, and he says, confidence isn't built by shouting affirmations in the mirror. It's built from concrete evidence that you are who you say you are, and that you build from there. It comes as a result of the person you are, and it blends into what everybody said before me. If you behave and act in the way that you want to be, sooner or later you're going to turn back and see, God, I've become that person. It wasn't just a vision. I am that person now. Yeah, I would say so. Confidence.
Amazing. So to conclude today's podcast, we have our question from tweens, and the one we have today is, do you think learning should be more about how we feel and think, not just what we remember? I think that probably falls in quite nicely after everything we talked about. So let's just dive in. Tristian, because you're on, why don't you fire ahead?
I think, yeah, absolutely. I don't think they need to know that I'm sold on that, for sure. The simplest way I could put this is the curriculum and what young people are currently learning is about what you can remember, as they've stated. It's not about what you need to know. And how you think and feel becomes 24/7 of your life as soon as you leave school. everything becomes how you think and feel. And given how active a tween's brain is, given how quickly they can receive information, portray information, and learn in so many different ways, it should be forming the basis of how we think and feel. I think that learning how we think and feel is probably supposed to be the single first pillar of education, and outside of that, everything should form because of that as a result.
Isn't it funny, the things that you do remember and the things you don't remember from school? Like, I remember some pointless poems or something else, but I can't remember any of the maths or any of this other stuff. Thank you. That was great. Claudia, for you, Claudia.
I honestly think if we change the way we taught, and we taught in stories, and we taught by doing. So example, and you'll probably find this with this forest school. You learn to count on leaves. You learn your times tables with sticks and stones. Then your knowledge comes because you've remembered it so easily. So I feel that the standardization, we're teaching to write an exam. And my husband is a good example. He remembers so much of school where I only learned what I needed to learn for the exam. So I feel that, yes, if we taught a different way, and if we taught more outdoors, our current teachers don't see how they can take their content and move it outdoors, which is so often, I think you could probably take 60, 70% of your content, take it outdoors, and guess what? You're now getting the thinking, doing, feeling, and then they will remember anyway.
We've actually been working on our own little thing, which is a principle-based learning. So I love this question because when I did my PGCE, we spent probably a whole day, or maybe even actually more. I think it shifted over to a couple of days deciding whether the kids should learn about Oxbow Lakes. And maybe some of you remember learning about Oxbow Lakes when you're in geography, thinking, of all the things I could learn about geography, why am I learning about Oxbow Lakes? But one thing, yeah, and that debate on, what the textbooks and what you learn and the curriculum, who decides that, and who has the right to decide that, and what's it for? And in today's age where the internet, and now with AI, love it or hate it, I won't get into a debate on that, but with the age of technology that we have, why are we learning stuff that we just regurgitate and then throw away? Why don't we learn how to develop empathy? Why don't we learn how to develop patience? Why don't we learn self-discipline? Why don't we learn how to overcome addiction? And those are lifetime endeavors that you can keep learning about forever. And so in Polaris, we actually have a personal development program which actually has those different principles, and people, we do it with corporate management as well as with students, can come and hang out with us and learn different techniques for empathy, the different ones for self-discipline and patience and humility, all kinds of different things. And I one thing that I'm quite hopeful for on the international sector that I do some lecturing on is that a lot of the international schools around the world are now looking at their curriculums and saying, with AI, what can we now do? Because we now have more time. Time in the classroom has now increased because of the AI technology. So what are we learning in the classroom now? What's of value? And I think the value is human development. It's learning how to be good human beings. It's how to look after one another and love one another and respect one another, even if you disagree with somebody. And I'm quite hopeful for those kinds of ideas to start filtering down through the education systems and be part of certainly the state sector in the UK.
Definitely needed.
Yeah.
And Saul?
I think absolutely. I think we, especially nowadays, now we're beginning to recognize the importance of mental health and our own welfare. I think the curriculum, the way we teach it, has to shift more towards how we support each other, how we develop empathy, independence, resilience, because everyone has a phone now. So if you need to know when a battle was, you can go and find it. The process of teaching, in my opinion, when you're teaching something like maths, isn't necessarily to know the answer, but it's to know the pathway to get there. Yeah, it's to know how to work it out, and just by learning the dates of this and that, I don't think it's helpful. And we see too many people hit burnout before they've left school. They lose that love of learning. They don't want to then continue learning. And then you see when people get to say 35, they begin to think, oh, maybe I can retrain. Maybe now I can go back to university because they've finally got over that trauma. And it shouldn't be that we have to, go back to school at 35. We should be able to continue from being a child. But I think we're so desperate to constantly get to the next stage, to constantly reaffirm that our education that we went through was okay. It was okay. It wasn't that bad. My kids will go and do that as well. It's the world's changing, and the one thing that isn't changing is education. And the idea that these schools, this idea of schools, the way we run schools is kind of place to occupy kids whilst we go to work, designed by factory owners 120 years ago. We don't need that anymore. And we need to start looking at what actually is important in the next phase of their life, not if this person did this on this day or that lake or that river. Like, we need to learn how to look after each other, how to look after ourselves so we can be better people.
Yeah, and more out of the box thinking, returning to the AI again. If you can get your essay written by AI and there's no way that anyone can ever find out that it was plagiarized anyway, which is where we're at, I mean, that's not a way to assess kids anymore, right?
I had this exact conversation with a parent today when I said, if we teach the kids right now and we ensure that they don't burn out and they don't lose a love of education, if they want to go and be a mathematician, they can do extra learning to get to that point. If we don't destroy that kind of mentality now, there is opportunities for them to continue. The internet's an amazing thing. We can keep learning that way. But if the mentality is that learning is bad and I don't want to be there, and then it's impossible. And once you've got to that point, it's impossible. And I've seen a lot of kids hit that point, even in primary schools, where you think, what are we doing? Like, who's this for?
And we're all going to be working till we're like 100 anyway. So, we've got plenty of chances later, further down the line to like re-educate ourselves. So all good. So I think that's a nice point for us to finish on today. So thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Perspectives podcast. We hope it sparks some reflection, whether you're a teacher, a parent, or simply someone who cares about the future of education. Because learning doesn't just happen in books or buildings, it can also happen in nature, in community, and in those powerful moments of risk, discovery, and connection. We want to raise young people who are resilient, creative, and grounded. Maybe it's time to not only rethink what we teach, but how and also where. Big thank you to our guests, Matt, Tristian, Claudia, and Saul. Until the next time, take care of yourself, stay curious, and keep informing those perspectives.